Hello and welcome to the Coaching Podcast, Coaching for Success in Sport and Business. Your host is Emma Doyle, the energy and high performance under pressure coach who is a world leader in unleashing human potential. Buckle up for this high octane session. Let them have it, coach.
G'day everybody and welcome to the Coaching Podcast. It is my honor and pleasure today to be interviewing Iosua Malaki, who I have known now for the last couple of years, which is super exciting. He is the Director of Junior Development, otherwise known as the Future Champs Manager at the Junior Tennis Champions Centre, well known more so as the JTCC Tennis Centre in College Park, Maryland. Welcome to the show, Iosua.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you. It's such an honor to be here.
Yes, and the reason we've got to know each other, just quick background for our audience, is you reached out to me and literally we just had a wonderful conversation, connected, and you were at the time Director of Tennis at a place down in Texas, and you invited me down for an incredible day. And ever since then, we've had a great mentor-mentee relationship and just a great friendship. So thank you for reaching out. Sometimes you just got to pick up the phone. You are a young game changer. So thank you for that. I appreciate you.
It's so funny because I did reach out and I just remember being like, oh, she probably won't reply. Like, it's okay, but it's worthwhile to reach out just to see if we could connect, and it turned out to be this amazing relationship, and I am so grateful.
Well, that's a good lesson out there to everyone listening. Just if you want to reach out to someone, just go ahead and do it. And what's the worst thing that they can happen? They don't write back. So I love that. All right.
Exactly.
What about the Vegemite question? You know the one. You either love it or you've never tried it. What's your take on Vegemite?
I have actually never tried it.
So Iosua, because you've never tried Vegemite before, could you share with us? You can choose your best coaching moment or your worst. Which one do you want to start with first, and what was the lesson?
My worst coaching moment kind of sends me back to the beginning of my coaching career. I was working at a public facility, and we had just hired this really great coach to work with our performance players in a different satellite location. And so I went up to this location and kind of studied under this person for a little bit, and then came back to our main location to kind of replicate what was happening in the satellite location. And I, instead of listening to kind of who I am, I just copied and pasted and thought that would be great. And because that was going so well up in our satellite location, it would just transfer and be great in our main location. And it did not go great. I lost a lot of players because of that. And I didn't really understand why it wasn't working. So I doubled down on what I saw and really tried to emulate this person. And it didn't fit who I was. It wasn't natural. It took a lot of thought. And I didn't know until we received feedback from a really close parent who had been in the program since their kid was really, really young. And they said that they elected to leave the program because they felt like it wasn't really who I was. Like, that's not why they wanted to be a part of the program. They wanted it because of, what I was like in the red ball and orange ball and green ball. They wanted that energy and the enthusiasm and the support that I had. And I just went down more of the old directive route with the performance. And it did not go well, to say the least.
What a great lesson already about trusting your intuition and also following your path of, it's great to take one tool from somebody else. It's great to be able to be influenced by others, but at the end of the day, backing who you are and what you're about. I love that. Thank you for sharing. What about on the flip side, a great coaching moment?
Yeah, I think that came probably right before COVID, I was coaching this young female athlete, um, and she was really, really confident and a strong person who knew who she was off the court. And she would play matches and just have no idea what would happen. We would do some feedback after some tournaments, and she'd be like, I don't know what was happening. That's not who I am. That's not how I play. And she didn't really understand why it kept happening because it was something that had happened to her for quite a long time. And so we spent a lot of time just kind of connecting who she is and understanding that that can still apply on the court. That doesn't have to change. You don't have to become this other person. Um, that the space that is the tennis court is kind of your performance space. It is kind of really where you get to showcase every part of you. And I think for her, it was really connecting with how strong she was off the court and her decisions and how quickly she made those decisions, and then being able to transfer that on court because she kept going back and overanalyzing and overthinking all of these scenarios. And it was like, look, you are so great at making decisions. You can connect these two things and be the same person on it and off the court. And she ended up going on to become a top 100 player in the nation in her girls 18 and under, and then went on to play college tennis. And we still have a really wonderful relationship. And it's just, I would consider her a friend at this point. She is just a really lovely person and have really, really enjoyed getting to know her.
So the through line so far is, again, this authenticity is the word that's coming up for me, about her stepping into her authentic self, you as a coach, you know, discovering your authentic self and what you can bring to the coaching landscape. So some fabulous messages so far. All right, what about your sliding doors moment? Is there one?
There has been a couple, and I think the one that really sticks out to me is, honestly, it's meeting you. I think that was a moment where I've really started to lean on the leadership portion of kind of my role now at JTCC and my leadership back when I was in Texas in a director's role. And I used to shy away from it a lot. I think I had this tendency to hide and not really want to be out in front of people and just kind of sit back and coach and do what I do on court, but not really step into a leadership position. And we have really worked on stepping in and embracing that. I think that's been such a wonderful thing for me is learning how to embrace leadership as a whole.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I've got this giant silly grin on my face. I know this is an audio podcast, but I really appreciate that. And I think one of the jobs of a good mentor is just to see you step into the tools. I'm sure we're going to talk about the word embrace a little bit later on, about how to set up your year for success, which is very, very topical, that this episode is coming out in the middle of January, and an opportunity for all of us to help influence each other. And because, you know, even this morning I was like, thank you for helping me be accountable as well. You're on top of all your things for the year. So I'm sure we're going to discuss that after the post, the regular questions. All right. Our guiding question, Iosua, in 1 to a maximum of 3 words. What do you think makes a great coach?
I think it's joy, empathy, and connection. Joy, I feel like to really be great, what you do must bring you tremendous joy. It would become so monotonous and boring. And I don't think you can be really great and not show joy for every single moment that you're out there. The empathy portion, I think you must be willing to embrace how difficult times can be, especially with whoever you're working with, without trying to immediately jump in and fix and make things better. And that's something I've kind of try to embrace myself, because I'm one of those people who wants to jump in right away and help and fix and do all those things. And I think that sometimes people need you to sit with them and how hard sometimes can really be. And then connection for me, I just believe that connection's at the heart of what we all do. And to be able to connect with such a diverse and wide amount of people, I think that that's what makes you great. And I think that for me, at least, I've noticed that that's been something that's really helped me throughout my career, is making these great connections and building these relationships, and having so many amazing people to lean on and also to help too.
Joy, empathy, and connection, 3 tremendous coach qualities. We'd love everyone just to reflect on that in their own coaching, especially as we kick off 2023. All right. And what about where we ask you to ask us a question? By the way, everybody, one of your superpowers is curiosity and discovery. You have this beautiful thirst to want to drink from the fountain of knowledge. So what's that one question that you love to ask of others?
I love to understand, like, moments of failure, and then how did you rise from the failure? If there was a moment that was one of the hardest falls, and then what were those steps to rise, and what was that like? Because I think that we can learn so much about each other just from how we rise from failure.
Someone said on my podcast last year, I think he said, Emma, we fail every day. I was like, yeah, we do. And that's how we rise. That's why I think, even as you know, practice 10 in what makes a great coach is resiliency. And I think being able to be resilient, get back up day in, day out when things don't go perfectly. So thank you for posing that question for us all to reflect on. All right, so let's go now into, we mentioned before that we have a mentor-mentee relationship. And what's been, I know recently we reflected on the last 12 months. There was one thing that you said about a tool that we use week in, week out, I thought would be cool to share with everybody as a way to work. And I know you work with your staff now in this way. Do you want to share that tool and the impact it's had?
So it's really been this model that you use, which is G.R.O.W. Okay, starting with goal, and then your reality, and then options or opportunities, and then our way forward. And it's something that we have used really frequently, you and I, and it just brings a lot of clarity to each session. Because I know I'm someone who can get off topic really, really easily, just because I get so wrapped up in conversation and I get really excited. And so I'm like, oh yeah, let's talk about this. And it just really helps come back to what's really important. Why are we here? And gives you that really funneled vision of everything. It gives you that way we start from our reality and kind of funnel it all the way down to what are our steps going forward from here.
Yeah, and business coaches on the line will know that is a very common tool used in the business world. So I think it's a great tool for sports coaches to, even if you're having a staff meeting or even a one-on-one with your athlete, it's a great way to laser in the focus, as you said. And also you mentioned recently, as you were reflecting on your year, one of the things you loved was the accountability piece. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
For me, especially my personality, I need very specific things to hold me accountable. And so this, especially those way forwards, you really set out tasks or things that need to be done and by a certain time. And it just gives us that structure that really helps kind of move these ideas into reality, right? So the only way we can move things from our brain is through our hands and through our heart. So we have to start doing things. And I think that that's something that that way forward piece really holds us accountable for doing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And as I said earlier, you help me be accountable as well. When we're a mentor, it's not just do what we've spoken about. It's actually, reminds me to make sure that I'm accountable as well. So one of those tools that I think would be really useful is that relates to practice 3 in the book around purpose, is how we choose one word. Now, the context of this is, and I've asked this of you, I asked this of myself, I asked this of my, those that I care deeply about each year. If whatever year you're in, so for example, if 2023 was, notice past tense, was the richest year of your life, what word would you choose to govern your thoughts, your actions, your decisions and behaviors? So it's a really great question, isn't it? Do you want to share what resonates with you about this process?
Yeah, so it was something that you posed to me last year too, and it's so interesting because one word can really encapsulate so many things. And for me, this year, I chose embrace, to embrace leadership, like we talked about earlier, in all sorts of aspects. Embrace it in my everyday life, embrace it in my career, embrace it, walking down the street. And I just think that it gives you such guidance into your decisions that you make, right? If this year is about embracing for me, it gives me so much guidance into the decisions I'm going to make, versus if, I just set a random goal, it may not give me guidance in every aspect of my life. One single word can give you a ton of guidance into everyday decisions.
And I love how you expanded this coaching tool into giving it a tagline as well. So are you comfortable sharing the tagline?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So my tagline for this year is I am enough. And it's something that I feel like I have struggled with embracing in general and throughout my whole life. And I really wanted to give myself a little bit of just a little saying, a little mantra that I can give myself to say when I feel like my threshold is being challenged. I can just tell myself I am enough, and embrace that fact, because I think that's really, really empowering.
And the other thing, and I love your language, by the way, when your threshold is challenged, it's like one of my favorite things to say. So the other thing, when your threshold is challenged, that's really important that you fall back on. And the other exercise that we've undertaken, both of us, in the last 2 weeks, as well as many coaches around Australia. So again, it's like a dream come true for me to have just traveled from Perth to Brisbane, Sydney, Hobart, Adelaide, and I've got the final one coming up in Melbourne, talking about practice 2 in the book, which is belief. Sometimes we all struggle with belief. So being able to identify your strengths, or especially in the coaching and athlete world, we say superpowers, and then being able to say something as simple as, my superpowers are my energy, my courage, and I take action, and that is who I am, is something I'd really invite everyone just to reflect on. We call it the onion model. At the center of the onion, looks like a little peace symbol, and you put your 3 core superpowers in there, because when your threshold is challenged, which it will be numerous times throughout the year, it's a great idea to fall back on those strengths. So I am going to invite you, Iosua, if you feel brave, because this is an exercise that I've just done with a bunch of coaches where they had to step up and say it out loud to everybody. Would you be willing to share he's been very courageous on the podcast today. I'm very impressed. But do you want to share your strengths, and maybe even the journey around when you first read that chapter, or that practice in the book, and you were a little confronted around it as well? Could you share that?
When I was reading the book, and then at the end of each of these practices, you have kind of action steps and questions and things like that to kind of go through. And one of the questions was identifying your strengths. And I took some time and I was thinking, and I was like, what are my strengths? Like, I surprisingly really, really struggled with finding 3 identifiable strengths. And so I did something courageous, and I reached out to my friends and some clients that I work with, and I reached out to you, of course, as well. And it was really amazing to see how everyone came up with the same 3. They used different words and different ways to say it, but they came up across, I had screenshots of all of them, and the same things came up. And it took me, because I was like, oh, this is it. Like, these are my superpowers, because so many of these people who I care about deeply in my life, this is how they identify me. This is how they see me. And for all of you to know, my superpowers are empathy, curiosity, with itness, and that's who I am.
Oh, I got goosebumps. Love it, love it, love it. And with itness, what do you mean by with itness?
With itness is being, I feel like it's just being on top of it, being able to kind of have your pulse on a lot of different things at once. And you described it really well. You described it as having eyes in the back of your head. And I had never heard it described that way before. And I was like, that is kind of, that's something that I identify with. I always try to have this like non-judgmental look, a bird's eye view of kind of what I'm doing at all times. And that way I can know what is happening there, what is happening over there.
Fantastic, fantastic. And the other exercise that I've been really focusing on in the last 2 weeks, and I know you've spent some time doing this as well, and this is not an easy exercise. It relates to practice 3 in the book, which is purpose. And coming up with a purpose statement. Now, to get to the purpose statement, there's a couple of questions that I know you work through those 4 questions to get to the process. But first, you even started with a again non-judgmental snapshot of where you're at based on the practices of what makes a great coach. Could you share a bit about the process to be able to get to your purpose statement?
I took the 10 practices, and I gave myself a score from 1 to 10, 10 being, that is it. I have reached it. And then 1 being something I need to grow in. And it gave me such a great view of where I am at, because there are some areas that I was lower in, and I was starting to go, okay, these are areas I need to really, really think about trying to stretch myself and trying to push myself into these areas a little bit more, because sometimes they do make me feel a little uncomfortable. And I think that that's such a great kind of scale, I guess. Your uncomfortableness with something can kind of help lead you into, these are areas that you might need to stretch yourself in a little bit.
And that's another thing that you did really well, back to the onion model, where you just put 3 stretch areas and the related behaviors, as well as who can help you with that. So I love that. I love that you are continuing to expand the tools as well. Like, here's a coaching tool, but you've been able to I correct my own language there, and you've been able to expand the tools so it's more meaningful to you to attach those behaviors, which is just super awesome. But back to the purpose statement. So some of the questions that you work through is the first one about when you are passionate, when you are living your passion, who are you being? Which is question 1. Question 2, what do you hold to be most important professionally? And you elicited all your values around that. The third question is, what would you like to give those you care deeply about? If you could give them something beyond a gift, of course. It is a gift of being resilient, for example, or determined. Or for me, I want to give all my nieces and nephews the gift of just take action. You want something done, just move, take at least a step forward. And then the final one being legacy. So what do you want people to feel when they leave your court? Or how do you want them to, when they've had an interaction with you, what is it that you want to leave them with? many young coaches are going, legacy, I'm not at the end of my career, hang on. But you went through that process. You were able to just brainstorm, dot point, and then put that into a paragraph, and then you were able to distill that into one sentence. So please, did I miss anything first in the process before we get to your purpose statement?
No, you nailed it. That's exactly kind of that process of going through a much larger idea of everything and funneling it down into this one singular sentence that is your definition and purpose for the year.
Yeah, fantastic. And it's not an easy process. How long did it take you to do that?
It probably took me a couple hours to sit down and really think about these things, because I try to put myself in those scenarios. Like when you ask these questions, I have to give myself some time to think, and I'll jot down some ideas and some thoughts, and then move on to the next question and do the same thing, and then I'll look it back over, and then you start to see little themes and connect the dots, and then before you know it, you have, like you said, you have this whole paragraph, and then you kind of keep working and distilling it down.
So I think it would be an awesome way to finish this episode with such an inspiring young game changer. Iosua, thank you for impacting my life. I think we need to finish on your purpose statement, and perhaps I could share mine as well, to really let the audience know that we live and we breathe this stuff, and we invite everybody, especially at the start of every year, to set these intentions. Maybe they could just pick one of the coaching tools that we spoke about, the onion model, the scaling questions, or the purpose statement, and just give it a go and just see what comes up for them. Pick one word for the year. So do you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. I lead with empathy and courage to inspire people to embrace their authentic selves and step into their greatness as braver, bolder leaders.
I just wanted to pause there for a minute, just for suspension and just get everyone driving going, oh, is she lost for words? I am, because that's how a purpose statement needs to make you feel. And I could really feel that in your firing off your little neurons for the year. So my purpose statement is, I harness energy and empower people to take authentic action so they can see real possibilities beyond what they could have ever imagined possible, unleashing human potential. Thank you for pausing for effect there, Iosua.
Anytime.
Oh, love it. We have a wonderful time when we get together, talking about coaching, talking about life. That's where it's at, and it's not work-life balance. We've just finished setting your goals and setting your year up for success. Instead of work-life balance, what do we call it?
Life-work balance.
There you go. Food for thought, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Coaching Podcast, and thank you so much, Iosua, for being such a great and inspiring coach.
Thank you, Emma, for having me.
The Coaching Podcast is sponsored by Transition Coach for Athletes, a global coaching, mentoring, and US placement service. The service helps athletes navigate the often challenging world of choosing your best college fitness performance. Visit www.transitioncoachforathletes.com. That's the number 4